They laughed when they let you go. Now they're burning with jealousy, watching God lift you higher. There comes a time in every believer's life when the tables turn. A time when God, in His infinite justice, decides that enough is enough. And the very people who once discarded you, disrespected you, diminished your worth, they are now being forced to watch you rise. That's where you are right now. You've stepped into a season where God is not only blessing you, He is exposing the narcissist who tried to bury you. At C.S. Lewis 2025, we speak directly to those moments when heaven begins to vindicate you publicly. And make no mistake, they're going insane with jealousy. Let's begin with this truth. God doesn't play when it comes to His chosen vessels. When someone mistreats a child of God, especially one walking in purity, humility, and obedience, they're not just offending a person, they're offending heaven. And God sees it all. You are being lifted publicly, and it's driving them mad. There was a time you were invisible, not because you lacked worth, but because the people around you were blind. Blind to your loyalty, blind to your quiet strength, blind to the way you carried love like a mantle, even after being betrayed, overlooked, and dismissed. You weren't flashy, and you didn't fight to be seen, and so they assumed there was nothing within you to see. And one of them, the narcissist, became the boldest in their blindness. They believed their absence would ruin you, that their rejection would break you, that their silence would strip you of your dignity. They convinced themselves that walking away from you was a declaration of your smallness, as if your value could be reduced to their validation. But what they failed to understand was this: when God hides a person, it's not to punish them, it's to prepare them. In your hidden season, God wasn't ignoring you, He was incubating you. While they laughed and moved on, God leaned close. While they spread rumors, God whispered truth. While they entertained the crowd, God refined your character in the furnace of loneliness. It didn't feel holy then, it felt like abandonment. Like you were forgotten in a place where your prayers only reached the ceiling. But what they didn't know, and what you yourself could not yet see, is that heaven was investing in your rise, in a way no man, no betrayal, no narcissist could block. Now the season has shifted. The ground beneath you is no longer barren, it's blooming. Doors that were once bolted shut are swinging open, not by force, but by favor. And it's not happening in secret. No, God, in His divine wisdom and poetic justice, is raising you up where they can see it. Not for your ego, but for His glory. The narcissist who thought they walked away from someone ordinary is now being forced to watch you become extraordinary. They hear your name in conversations they never imagined. They see your presence in circles they never deemed you worthy of. They scroll past your image, your voice, your testimony, and it shakes something inside them they cannot name, because it reminds them of the truth they buried. They didn't leave someone forgettable. They left someone anointed. This is the very thing the narcissist cannot tolerate, not because you've moved on, but because you've moved up, and they had nothing to do with it. They cannot control the narrative anymore. The version of you they invented to justify their selfishness is unraveling. People are seeing you clearly, and, more than that, you are seeing yourself clearly. And that revelation alone is what terrifies them most, because it means they were never the source of your worth. They never had the power they believed they held. And now, stripped of control, all they can do is sit back and watch God do what He always intended. Make a spectacle of His goodness through your life. But make no mistake, this elevation isn't just for applause, it's for accountability. God is not raising you to prove them wrong. He's raising you to prove Himself faithful. He is a God who remembers every tear, hears every groan, and answers not only in private, but in public. When his children are dishonored, he responds not with vengeance, but with vindication. And his vindication is never silent. It comes through open doors, unexpected favor, unexplainable peace. The kind that causes those who hurt you to question what they've done, and worse, who they've lost. And while you're standing in this new light, clothed in strength and dignity, surrounded by divine provision, they are shrinking in confusion, unable to understand how someone they deemed disposable became someone so deeply favored. But it's not your job to explain. It's not your burden to carry their shame. Because this moment isn't about them. It's about you. And more than that, it's about God's faithfulness to you when no one else saw your value. Still, the most striking part of your rise isn't just that you've been lifted. It's that they are being brought low by the very trap they set for you. The rejection they hoped would destroy you has become their own undoing. And as God lifts you higher, He begins to let them fall, not by force, but by truth. The very traps they set for you, they're now walking into. There is a sobering truth hidden in the way God orchestrates justice. He doesn't shout when He moves, but His movement changes everything. And when God begins to move on behalf of someone who was deeply wronged, He doesn't just bless them, He reveals what was hidden, exposes what was false, and forces the proud to walk headlong into the pit they dug for someone else. This is not just poetic irony. This is divine order. It is the law of sowing and reaping, and it always arrives on time. You see, when the narcissist set out to damage you, it wasn't enough for them to walk away. No, they had to rewrite the story in their favor. They needed others to see you through their distorted lens, to believe that you were the problem, that you were the unstable one, the one who couldn't be loved, the one who was never enough. They spread confusion in places where your name once brought peace. They distorted truth through subtle accusations, planting doubts not only in others' minds, but in your own. The aim was never just separation. It was spiritual disarmament. They wanted to leave you not only rejected, but also confused, silenced, discredited. And yet what they never understood was that God always watches from the shadows. Every time you bit your tongue instead of retaliating, every time you cried in secret and laid your heart bare before the Lord, every time you chose mercy when your flesh screamed for justice, God took note, and in doing so, He was building something they couldn't see, a case for your vindication, not to punish them with wrath, but to confront them with reality, because in God's kingdom, truth doesn't stay buried. It resurrects. It comes back clothed in light, and when it does, no narcissist, no manipulator, no liar can stop it. Now their lies are unraveling, and not by your hand, but by the weight of their own deception. The people they once swayed are waking up. The charm they used so effortlessly is wearing thin. They are beginning to lose control of the narrative they built, and worse, they are being seen for who they truly are. What was once hidden behind charisma and confidence is now being revealed for what it is, a hollow spirit, void of empathy, addicted to control, threatened by your light. And what makes it unbearable is that they are watching your light grow, while theirs dims. They are watching you prosper without them. They are watching people listen to you, love you, defend you. The very things they told themselves you would never receive. They're watching the trap snap shut, not on your feet, but on theirs. This is how God moves, not with public spectacles, but with private reversals. The ones who betrayed you are now being left behind by the very circles they once influenced. Their phone calls go unanswered, their manipulation loses power, their energy fades, and deep inside, whether they admit it or not, they know This is the result of what they did. You were the bridge God had extended to them, not only for love, but for their healing. But instead of honoring it, they tried to burn it. And now they're standing alone in the smoke, coughing on the consequences of their own pride. You, on the other hand, have kept your integrity. You didn't clap back. You didn't launch a counterattack. You didn't try to control the outcome. You simply trusted God. And that trust, costly though it was, is now becoming the shield around your life. Every word spoken against you is returning to its source empty. Every curse they tried to place over your name is crumbling under the sound of God's declaration, "This one is mine." And while they are beginning to unravel, you're being re-established in power, with clarity, with new connections, with spiritual authority they never imagined you had. Don't be surprised if they try to mimic your growth now, if they start quoting scriptures they never read before, if they start posting about healing and light and self-awareness, using words they once mocked you for living by. It's not transformation, it's imitation. It's not conviction, it's collapse. Because the enemy of your soul cannot stand the fact that you rose, not just emotionally, but spiritually, and that you did it without compromising your character. You did it without needing revenge. You did it because God lifted you, not because you pushed your way up. So now, let your heart remain soft. Let your posture stay humble. Don't let their fall make you forget your own climb. You survived betrayal, character assassination, abandonment, and spiritual warfare, and yet you emerged with your faith intact. That's not weakness, that's legacy. And it means your story now has weight. Your voice has power. Your tears have purpose. You are no longer someone recovering from what happened. You are someone carrying the evidence of what God redeemed. And if you're reading this today, if your spirit feels it, if your memories are stirring, if your chest tightens with the weight of what they did, but your eyes lift with the strength of where God has brought you, then don't stay silent. Comment below with the words, "God reversed it." Because someone else who's still in the middle of their pain needs to know. He does. He sees. He vindicates. He restores. And sometimes the same people who tried to bury you will one day whisper your name, not with power, but with regret. People are now defending you and confronting them. There is a shift in the atmosphere that you didn't ask for, and yet God orchestrated it anyway. In seasons past, you were left alone to carry the weight of misunderstanding. You walked through fire with no one but the Lord beside you. You endured slander in silence, endured passive aggression disguised as civility, endured the pain of watching people believe lies because the liar was charming, confident, calculated. And you were too honest to play their game, too wounded to perform, too faithful to betray your convictions. So you stayed quiet, even when it cost you connection, reputation, and comfort. But what you didn't know then, and what you're starting to see now, is that God has been working on hearts behind the scenes. The same people who once joined the narcissist in whispering about you are now whispering about something else entirely, the truth. Not everyone is courageous enough to apologize, but their silence now speaks volumes. The shift is undeniable. And in some rare, holy moments, a few of them are speaking up. You may never hear it directly, but conversations are changing. People who once entertained the narcissist narrative are beginning to ask hard questions. They're re-examining what they once believed. Some are quietly ashamed that they ever doubted you. Some are finally admitting to themselves that what you said back then wasn't bitterness, it was discernment. And others, more bold, are going to the narcissist and saying aloud what you always hoped someone would. You lost something sacred, and it's no one's fault but your own. And that confrontation, is shaking the narcissist in a way your silence never could. Because it doesn't come from you, it comes from the very people they once used to elevate themselves. The audience has turned, The spotlight they craved is now burning hot with exposure. The applause they once harvested is gone, and all that remains is the echo of your name being spoken with reverence, clarity, and admiration. What they tried to destroy has now become a point of inspiration. Your faith, once mocked as naive, is now spoken of as unwavering. Your gentleness, once seen as weakness, is now honored as strength. Your boundaries, once labeled too much, are now being studied by those trying to escape the same kind of control you survived. You are no longer the one being questioned. You are the one being defended. And here's the part they never saw coming. You didn't have to beg for that defense. You didn't manipulate your way into vindication. You simply stayed true to God, to yourself, to the truth. While they curated an image, you cultivated integrity. While they performed, you prayed. And it was your authenticity, not your anger, that finally moved the hearts of others. Now, every time someone tells them the truth, they flinch. Not because the words are cruel, but because they're undeniable. The narcissist cannot control the narrative anymore. And it's not because you fought harder. It's because truth doesn't need defense. It only needs time. What you're witnessing is not just personal redemption, it's prophetic alignment. It's the moment where God reveals that He is not only your comforter in private, but your defender in public. He is the one who takes what was done in the dark and brings it into the light, not for revenge, but for righteousness. And in His timing, always perfect, never premature, He ensures that those who believe the lie will one day proclaim the truth. This shift is not about vindication alone. It is about redefinition. You are being reintroduced to the world, not as the broken one, not as the misunderstood, not as the discarded, but as the truth-teller, the survivor, the vessel of God's mercy and might. And as you walk in that reintroduction with quiet confidence, those who once stood against you are forced to reckon with what they chose to ignore. You were never the villain. You were the one God was protecting all along. And now He's letting the world see it. They cannot stand that others desire you now. There is something terrifying to a narcissist about the thought of you being loved correctly, not desired in secret or tolerated out of convenience, but seen, chosen, and honored in the full light of day. It haunts them in ways even they cannot explain, because their ego fed on the assumption that no one else would ever want you the way they pretended to, that you were only valuable when they said so, that your heart, once broken by their carelessness, would remain unavailable to anyone else, especially someone capable of loving you without games, without conditions, without control. But God is not bound by their assumptions, and He has a way of reminding your enemies that you were never theirs to possess, you were His to protect. And now that you've been restored, emotionally, spiritually, even physically, there is a fragrance about you that cannot be hidden. You radiate something holy, something costly, something rare. It's not your appearance alone, it's your presence, your purpose. It's the authority in your voice when you speak truth. It's the kindness you give that no longer comes from desperation. You are not begging for love anymore. You are attracting it by simply being aligned with who God made you to be. And they feel it. They hear about it in whispers, maybe from mutual acquaintances, maybe online, maybe in ways that are too coincidental to ignore. They feel it in their gut. Something about you is different now. You're glowing in ways they never imagined. And people are noticing. Not just any people, but those with real intention. Those who know what to do with someone like you. Those who are not intimidated by your strength or confused by your depth. You're starting to draw individuals who carry clarity, who walk in truth, who don't need to break others just to feel whole. You are being pursued by souls who understand what the narcissist rejected, that a person with a heart like yours is a once-in-a-lifetime presence. And this is what enrages them most. Not that you're moving on, but that you're moving on into something better, into attention that isn't manipulative, into affection that isn't earned through suffering, into possibility that doesn't demand your silence, your smallness, your submission. You are becoming visible to people who see you, not as someone to mold, but as someone to cherish. The narcissist cannot endure the thought of someone else discovering your value, because deep down, they always knew it was there. That's why they tried so hard to suppress it. That's why they diminished you with subtle criticism, starved you with emotional distance, used comparison as a weapon. They knew they were standing in the presence of something holy, something anointed, and instead of honoring it, they tried to harness it, contain it, control it. But now that their grip is broken, they have to live with the reality that someone else may one day do what they refused to, love you well. And so they burn in silence. They pretend not to care. They act unbothered. But behind that indifference is torment, vivid, gnawing torment. Because every person who smiles at you now becomes a threat to the image they once built of you. Every compliment you receive, every door that opens, every connection you form, it all reminds them of what they walked away from. And the worst part? You're not looking back. You're not waiting for them to realize it. You've accepted what they denied, and now you are ready to receive what they were never prepared to offer. There's something sacred about this kind of growth, the kind that requires no audience, no validation, no revenge. It just is. Quiet, holy, unshakable. And while they are left to sit in the consequences of their own ego, you are walking forward, slowly, surely, freely, into a future built not on fantasy, but on the unchanging foundation of who God says you are. And no matter how hard they try to deny it, they know what you carry now is something they will never have access to again. You were their blessing, and they lost it forever. There are moments when heaven places a gift into someone's life, and that gift doesn't come wrapped in grandiosity, glamour, or ease. It comes clothed in gentleness, in humility, in loyalty. Sometimes the most powerful blessings arrive quietly, walking into broken places with healing hands and a heart willing to stay even when it's hard. You were that kind of blessing. You were the kind of soul who loved deeply, who forgave quickly, who offered more than what was ever required. You carried the patience of a peacemaker and the wisdom of someone who had suffered but never lost their softness. And you gave that to someone who mistook it for weakness. To the narcissist, your compassion was manipulation, your discernment was overreaction, your hopefulness was delusion. They couldn't see your value because they were blinded by their own ego, and when God sent you into their life, they saw you as common, not because you were, but because they lacked the capacity to recognize anything sacred unless it served their pride. They didn't know they were standing in the presence of someone who would intercede for them in prayer, even while being mistreated. Someone who could have exposed their cruelty, but instead covered it with mercy. Someone who held heaven in their voice and healing in their presence. You weren't just a good person. You were anointed, appointed, a vessel sent by God at a pivotal moment in their life, not just to love them, but to call them higher. You were sent as a mirror, a compass, a challenge, not to control, but to awaken. But instead of waking up, they recoiled. Instead of honoring the gift, they disrespected the giver. They didn't just reject you, they rejected the move of God in their life. And now they are experiencing the true consequence of that rejection. Absence. There is a silence that falls after the departure of someone sent by God. It's not the kind of silence you fill with distractions or rebound connections or shallow noise. It is a spiritual void, a sudden emptiness where divine presence once lingered. And that's what they feel now. It haunts them in quiet moments, when no one's around to flatter them, when the mask slips and their soul is left bare. In those still, heavy moments, they remember the sound of your voice, the way your spirit made the atmosphere different, the way peace seemed to follow you into rooms they couldn't control. They remember what they didn't know they had, and they ache because now they know they will never find it again. God is not cruel, but He is just. And when someone mishandles a sacred gift, He removes it, not as punishment, but as protection, for the one who gave too much, too long, to someone who never intended to honor it. And what makes this even harder for them is that they know. You didn't leave with bitterness. You left with grace. You didn't slander. You didn't retaliate. You simply let go, with strength in your steps and sorrow in your soul, and heaven stood behind your exit like a pillar of fire. And now they live in the wilderness of their own choosing, searching for pieces of you in people who lack your depth, chasing shadows that imitate your light but offer no warmth. Their life is full, yet hollow, loud, yet disconnected, busy, yet barren. Because once someone has tasted the presence of a God-sent soul, everything else is counterfeit. They thought you were optional, replaceable, ordinary, but now they see you for what you've always been, a once-in-a-lifetime encounter with heaven's grace, a turning point they ignored, a covering they rejected, a healing they threw away, and the truth settles over them like ash. They fumbled the very blessing they prayed for. And God, in His sovereignty, has closed the door, not to hurt them, but to shield you. Because a blessing that is not honored becomes a burden, and your destiny was never to be burdened by someone else's refusal to grow. You were called to be cherished, not tolerated, to be lifted, not diminished. And now that you've been freed, God is restoring everything that was delayed, withheld, or broken while you poured yourself into someone who couldn't contain your value. They lost you forever, not because you were cruel, but because they were careless. Not because you ran, but because they refused to reach. Not because you changed, but because you finally accepted the truth. You were never theirs to keep. You were heaven's jewel, and heaven has taken you back. God is not just restoring you. He's making you untouchable. God never just restores what was taken. He increases it beyond recognition. And in this season, He is not simply giving you back your peace, your joy, your clarity. He's giving you something the narcissist never wanted you to have: unshakable authority. You are no longer just healed. You are protected, guarded, surrounded by a covering they can't access, can't imitate, and can't tear down. You've walked through the fire, and now you shine with a purity that can't be faked. They watch you, but they can't touch you. They whisper, but they can't shake you. Because God didn't just vindicate you, He elevated you beyond reach. You have become the very proof that divine justice is not a fantasy. It is real, it is holy, and it does not fail. They lost access to you, but more than that, they lost access to the favor that once covered them when they stood near you. And now, as heaven surrounds your name with light, your story becomes the testimony that God doesn't just heal, He transforms. They didn't realize it then, but being near you gave them access to blessings they never earned. Your presence invited peace into chaos. Your prayers covered them even when they mocked your faith. Your discernment shielded them from dangers they couldn't see. But when they chose to sever that connection, they didn't just walk away from you. They walked out from under the shelter of divine favor. And now they feel it. Things don't flow like they used to. Doors they once opened easily now remain locked. Their charm is losing its power, and their strategies fall flat. Because it was never about their brilliance. It was about your covering, a covering they dishonored and discarded. Meanwhile, you rise, not in arrogance, but in quiet strength. You're not who you used to be. You've been forged in fire, but you carry water now, healing for others,